Okay, so my son's 2011 Toyota Tacoma. I was going to go have it inspected a couple days ago. Came out, anytime I get ready to go get a car inspected, I walk around it, I make sure all the lights, turn signals, horn, I make sure everything's looks good. So I'm not going to be surprised when I get there and, something simple didn't work, that if I just would have looked, I would have been able to take care of it. Well, the one thing that I noticed, the horn doesn't work. Now, we haven't had this truck very long, and I don't remember when I test drove it if I ever tried the horn. I tried about everything else. Everything appeared to work. So I don't know if the horn didn't work when we bought it or what, but nonetheless, horn circuits are about as easy as they get. So I was going to take you on the little troubleshooting process that I'm about to do. And the first thing that I like to do is make sure that the basics are taken care of. So right here's the horns. It's got dual horns, and I just want to make sure the connectors were plugged in, and they appear to be. So the next step, so I've got the diagrams already. It's a pretty simple circuit. You got a horn relay. Here's your horn switch, goes through your clock spring. When you push your horn switch, you're completing a ground, which goes through, looks like it goes straight through the ECU. It does send a signal to the ECU to let the ECU know that you're blowing the horn, but it just jumpers straight through the ECU to the relay. So you really don't even have to worry about the ECU on this. The ECU is not going to make the horn not work. So we've got a fuse here. This is the fuse box underneath the engine, or not underneath, but in the engine compartment, underneath the hood. We got a 10 amp fuse that feeds terminals 3 and 1. So terminals 3 and 1 should be hot at all times. So that's the first thing we want to do, is we want to make sure that we've got power on 3 and 1. And then if we do, we're going to jumper one of those to 5 to see if the horns work. Obviously, that's one of the things that you got to rule out right from the start, is to make sure the horns will actually operate. You don't want to troubleshoot a bunch of stuff only to find out your horns were bad. So we want to get 12 volts to the horns to make sure that they do indeed work. Then we'll figure out, do we have a power, a ground, a relay? If the clock spring's bad, which is most likely that's what the problem is the clock spring, but we got to rule that out, because you don't want to have to pull a horn and replace the clock spring and then find out that, it was something a heck of a lot easier. So I've got the layout of the relays in that circuit, or that fuse box under the hood. And it looks like, if you read up here, number 17 is the horn relay. So if you look right here, number 17, that's the horn relay. This is the pinout for the relay. It's just a 4-wire relay. You got 1, 2, and then 3 and 5. 4 would be where that X is, but there's nothing there, so you just don't worry about that. So what did this say? 3 and 1 should have power. So that pin and that pin should have power. And then we'll just jumper 3 and 5. So we'll jumper these two to see if the horns work. So that's where we're going to start. So let me get my equipment, and we'll get out there under the hood. Okay, to open up the fuse box, you just got a little clip right there, and the whole little lid will come on off there. Just lay it out of the way. So according to that diagram, you look right here, number 17 was the horn relay. So 1, 2, 3, or from the big one, 1 up. So here's the big one. So that should be the horn relay, 1, 2, 3. We also want to I didn't print this whole thing out because I wanted it big enough so you guys could see it. But Toyota does put inside their deal the lid what everything is. So let's see if we can find the horn fuse. Okay. I don't know if you can see that or not. I know there's a lot of glare coming through, but anyway, it looks like that's the horn. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a 10 amp fuse. 1, 2, 3, 4. This 10 amp fuse right here. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure we got power at the fuse. So I got my test light hooked up to ground. Always make sure your test light, you know, works before you start checking circuits. So I'm just going to touch both sides of this fuse to make sure that there's power. So that guarantees me that fuse is good. Don't just touch one side and then say the fuse is good, because if it's blown, and this is the source side, this side will be, and the fuse is blown, only one side will light up. That's how you check for a bad fuse, by the way. If you don't want to pluck every fuse out and visually check it, you just take your test light and hit both sides. So next thing to do, I'm going to pluck this relay out. So let me get my fuse. Okay, so I've got a pair of relay pliers. So I'm going to carefully, I don't know how heavy duty these relays are. Sometimes you pop the tops off if you're not careful. Okay, so got the relay out. Now if you remember, okay, so if you look right here on the print, 3 and 1 should have power. So that should be 3, does have power, 1 does have power. So we have power on both them. So to jumper it, we needed 3 and 5. 1 and 5 would also work, but we'll just do 3 and 5. And that should bring the horn on. And I've just got I rigged this up years ago, but it's an old circuit breaker with a couple wires coming off of it. So I'm just going to touch it right here temporarily. Okay, so that does show that the horns are capable of working if they get power. So the next thing would be to see if we've got our signal coming from the steering wheel. So what you got to do there, if you look at 2, goes down, goes through the ECU, but it just goes straight through, and then it goes to the ground side of to the switch, and then the switch just grounds it. So if we go to power with our test light, stick our probe in 2, and if we push the horn button, we should be able to get the light to light up. And again, now I'm on the power side, so I'm going to go to 2, and these are big enough terminals. I'm not spreading them apart. I'm just going to stick my test light down inside there like that, and I'm going to hit the horn button while I'm watching the test light, and nothing. So we've just verified that we are not getting the ground circuit at 2. So the next step is to go to the steering wheel. So let me gather my stuff here. Okay, let me get some tools. Okay, on these Toyotas, oh, that was easy. You've got these little covers that snap in. The back snaps in first, And this is where your little clip is. So just stick something in there, depress this clip, and it should fall off. Let's get a light. Okay, well, there's the horn. So you can visibly see, I hope you can see it. If you see that little tab right there, that is the horn ground going to the horn button, and it is hooked up, so we can see that it's at least hooked up. So I guess the next thing, I need to get this airbag out of here. So let me I think to get the airbag out, I gotta get to these Torx right here, loosen those off. So let me get me a Torx set up. Okay, so I just got a ratchet. The Torx looks like a T30. That's what fit it. Same thing on this side, even though we got the cruise control knob. That may, I don't know if that's enough or not, but we'll see. Nope, I guess it needs a little bit more. Okay, that one feels like it's completely out. They don't come completely out. They're kind of captured in there with those pieces of plastic. But you got to get them out enough to where the airbag will come out, I think. Okay. Yeah, if you grab the little piece of plastic and just pull it, I don't know if you can see that, it'll come out. Now, so this brown wire right here is the horn wire. These are both your airbag wires, so we're just going to get this out of here, and then I guess we'll pull the lower shroud off. That's probably should have been the next step, but since I'm already to this point, I'm going to take this. Actually, I'll just use this right here. I'm going to use my Test Light clip to pop the little yellow tabs up real gingerly like, and then these, I think, pops right out of there. And you do really want to disconnect the battery, but I very seldom do that, to be honest with you. Whenever you set the airbag down, make sure you set it down like that. If it did happen to, they say that static can actually set these off. Very, very rare, but probably the planets would have to be lined up perfectly before that would happen. But if it does go off, you want it to throw the bag and the soft part up instead of having it like that and have this big piece of heavy metal shooting off in your car. Okay, so here we go. I mean, it looks like everything's hooked up. Now, if this system was working, I would be able to take this right here and touch it just like that and honk the horn. And as you can see, it's not happening. So the next step is to take this lower shroud off. And let's see. Okay. See that screw right there? That's what we got to get out. Just turn your wheel to where it's up, you know, it's up and down. And the reason I'm doing this, more than likely the clock spring is the problem, but we want to rule that out. So I want to get on the other, there should be a connector on the other side of, underneath this shroud. If I ground the wire for the horn circuit, it should blow the horns. In fact, before I do that, and we've already ruled that we didn't check the relay, but we verified that there's no ground getting to the relay. So I'm going to assume at this point that the relay's fine. You could also swap, you know, these relays. When you look at all these little blue relays, they're all the same. You could swap relays if you needed to for troubleshooting. So I'm going to go ahead and put that relay back in, because more than likely that relay is fine. And see, the wire that I'm looking for is this one right here, green and red wire. Should be a connector right here on pin 8. Looks like there's a green and red wire, and if I ground that, the horn should blow. Okay, so the screws are out. So now all I'm doing, now the steering wheel will lock. I'm not going to want it to if I turn it. Okay. Let's go up. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep this camera where it needs to be. I don't really have a mount for this camera yet. Okay, so there's the shroud. Okay, that's the ignition switch there. So that there's a green. Did I say green and red? There's a green and red right there. Okay. I wonder if that's pin 8. Can't tell. I can't see if that's pin 8 or not. Let me get a pin. First, let me verify that was green and red. Yeah, green and red. Never fails. Every time I set stuff up here, I need to open it. Okay, so just got a little T-pin. It's got a smaller. Let me get this T-pin in here and keep a hold of it. I'm gonna back probe it that way. I don't know if I'm in far enough. I'm gonna ground the test light, and there you go. So that pretty much verifies it's the clock spring that's the problem. So let me show you what I did on the diagram. Right here is where I grounded it with the test light. Just grounded it there, the horns worked. So either this ground would have been bad, so when you pushed it, it wasn't going through the coil, or the clock spring is open inside. And I mean, all you'd have to do if you really cared enough is to go to this point and that point and ring it. But we just verified the clock spring's not working, so the clock spring's open. It's very common. I've actually got a video where I disassembled a Jeep Wrangler clock spring just to kind of show you what's inside them and why they go bad the way they do. There's about 15 feet of a very fine ribbon that's wound around the clock spring itself, and then so it's wound about halfway. That way, when you turn the wheel all the way one way and all the way the other way, one way it actually winds it a little tighter, but there's enough slack in it to where it can do that. The other way, it's unwinding it. Well, after so many turns with the wheel over years, it's just a matter of time before something happens and something opens up, you know, inside the clock spring. And your clock spring has got, so if you've got a problem with your horn, any of your radio controls, of course you probably wouldn't know about the airbag unless you get a light or you're in a wreck and the airbag doesn't go off. Anything that's on your steering wheel, your cruise control, all that goes through your clock spring. So if you have a problem with any of that, there's a chance that your clock spring can be bad. So anyway, that's the troubleshooting for this horn circuit. So we just got to the connector right here. We grounded it, simulating pushing the horn button and blowing the horn. So we've narrowed it down to the clock spring is the problem. So the next video I make is going to be changing out this clock spring on this 2011 Toyota. Anyway, you guys take care.